in the book of Daniel chapter 2, Daniel anotaura pamusoro pemakumbo maviri edare, the two legs of iron. Ndokubva tatsanangura tikati the two legs represent the divided world, the divided kingdom under the Papal Rome. Now, my question is, what about the current Russia-Ukraine conflict? Does it fit to Daniel chapter 2? Does this war represent the two legs, the divided world? Can we identify two legs of the conflict? Amadiwa panyai ndichada kuti tidzidze, titererese, tione kuti pakati pehondo iri kurwiwa Russia neUkraine inofita here kana kuti inokwana here pana Daniel chapter 2. Saka pane manotsi akati wandei andakakombelela panapa, andichada kuverenga as fast as I can. Saka teerai nenzeve dzemukati mugone kuidentify kuti zvatiri kutaura izvi zviri kupindirana here. Let me start by saying the war between Russia and Ukraine clearly shows the world's division of Daniel chapter 2 verse 32. It is inevitable to agree that this conflict is a division of the world into two halves, two political groups. Hondo iri pakati peRussia neUkraine tikaicherechedza inotitaridza makumbo maviri echitombi chakadudzirwa naDaniel pana chapter 2. Two legs representing two world groups. On one side is NATO, led by USA. The other side, Russia and its allies. Now, kana divided legs actually represent the two groups. Is this going to be the world war? Nekuti kana tichitaura isusu kuti zviri kurepresenta the two legs, the divided kingdoms, pane a possibility yokuti ma-allies ekuNato achajoina Ukraine, ma-allies ekurussia achajoina Russia, and therefore World War III become inevitable. Zvinogoneka here zvinhu zvatiri kutsanangura izvi. Let's take back to the previous world wars. What was the situation? Zvaimboitika sei? World war yaitanga sei? Firstly, let us define world war. World war is a war that incorporates the whole world or a large portion of countries. Kana nyika zhinji dzikapinda muhondo towards a common cause, inogona kunzi world war, kunyange dzimwe nyika dzikasajoina. Chepiri, world war inogona kudefinwa seizvi: kana anonzi masuper powers akauya pamwe chete kuti azorwa hondo, kunyange mamwe ma-inferior powers akasara ari kunze, inogona kunzi a world war. Nenhau yekuti kurwa kwemasuper powers kunoaffecta futi ma-inferior powers. Mukatarisa, basically, you will see kuti ma-world wars usually start small. Ma-world wars esaya achirwiwa, inoti World War I neWorld War II. Pane a similarity yematangire ari kuita nyaya yeRussia versus Ukraine. Regai titange isusu nokucherechedza World War I kuti yakambotanga sei. In the year 1914 on 28 June, World War I inotanga. How it started? It started as this: June 28, 1914. There was an assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Bosnia. He was heir to Austro-Hungarian Empire, assassinated by a Serbian nationalist. A month after the assassination, Austria declared war on Serbia. In 1917, the USA joined the war, and later in 1918, almost all countries are fighting. But it all began with two countries with one assassination. And that was it with World War I. Now, ngatitarisei futi World War II kuti inotanga sei. September 1, 1939, Germany invades Poland. 2 days later, on September 3, 1939, once again, it was a domino effect, whereby a cumulative effect produced when one event sets off a chain of similar events. Kunonzi after the war, yasanganisa nyika dzose, approximately a number of about 50 million people died. Again, it began with one country invading another, Germany invading Poland. Saka tikacherechedza matangire eWorld War aya, tinobva taona isusu kuti hazvidi nyika zhinji kuti dzirwe kuti World War igotanga. World War can start by two countries, despite of how big they are or how small they are. Ndisingadi kuita rule in the possibility yokuti Russia versus Ukraine conflict can lead to World War III. No, but tangoti tingotreka kuti how world wars began in the previous wars. Pane chinhu one chandinodapo, chandoda tichinyatso kutarisisa, tichidzidze, tichinzwisise. Nyaya yedu remember kuti iri pa the divided legs. Ndoda tichitarise isusu kuti World War I neWorld War II dzichirwiwa. What was the situation in as far as Daniel 2 is concerned? Check it closely. In every world war, dominating countries are divided. Ngatitange isusu neWorld War I. In the First World War, Taiwan had the divided kingdoms. One leg and the other. One leg Taiwan kune inonzi Triple Alliance. Triple Alliance incorporated Germany, Italy, Austria, Hungary. On the other side, Taiwan has Triple Entente in Russia, France, and Britain. And that was it with World War I. World War II, tinowana futi the divided kingdoms, the divided legs. On one side, Taiwan inonzi Axis powers. In a German, Italy, and Japan. On the other side, on the other leg, Taiwan and the allies. Yainzi the allies. Yaiwan Russia, France, Britain, and later USA. And that was it with World War II. Even today, the war between Russia and Ukraine seems to be a war between two countries. But if you zoom out, you will see a divided world. The divided iron legs. On one side of the division, we have NATO, led by USA. On the other side, we have Soviet allies, led by Russia. So it is a war between two divisions of the world. Inogona kupiwa zita futi rokuti Cold War. What is Cold War? A Cold War is a state of conflict between nations that does not involve direct military action, but is pursued primarily through economic and political actions, propaganda, acts of espionage, or proxy wars waged by surrogates. Mukatarisa situation iri pa Russia versus Ukraine, inobudisa pachena definition ye Cold War. Yatati isusu the conflict between nations that does not involve direct military action. USA salida we NATO, ne Russia salida we ma Soviet states. ndidzo nyika dziri in conflict, but the conflict is not direct. It is being fought indirectly. But that is pursued primarily through economic and political actions. Muchaona kuti panorwa Ukraine neRussia pane zvinhu zvinozobudapo zvine chekuita nepolitics at the background, zvine chekuita neeconomy at the background. Ndopaya pamunozonzwa kwakunzi Russia inofanirwa kupiwa masanctions, Russiawo ichitotaura nyaya yekuti inokwidza mutengo weoil, kureva kuti two countries, two divisions are fighting, but chiri kubuda pamberi conflict yatiri kuwana pakati peRussia neUkraine, which is not the real conflict. The real conflict is between NATO and Russia and its allies. What is NATO, by the way? Chii chinombonzi NATO? Zvakatikoshera kuti tizive kuti NATO chinobva chii. NATO is an abbreviation. Inomira iyo, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is a security alliance between North America and Europe. It is a security alliance. It was formed after the Second World War. The goal they put forward was to protect the democratic freedom. It was signed in April 4, 1949. But it was simply an anti-Soviet accord, encountering any future aggression by USSR. It promised all members collective security. Article 5 of the NATO Treaty clearly shows that the parties agreed that an armed attack against one or more countries of the NATO country simply signifies an attack to other members of the organization. However, there was more to NATO than defense. NATO is an alliance of liberal countries, an engine of democratization that was supposed to promote common values and interests and also push back against the rise of communism. However, Moscow, kana kuti Russia and its allies, saw this alliance as a threat to its interests and formed the Warsaw Pact in 1955. The Warsaw Pact was formed to counterweight the NATO. Countries which were involved were Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Albania, Bulgaria, and other inferior states which joined hands with Russia. With this situation at hand, therefore, outbreak of World War III was inevitable. Why? Because all the two sides became suspicious of each other. Pakafomewa the NATO Warsaw Pact ichipinda, magroup maviri, the divided kingdoms, the divided legs, dzakakonzera kuti both NATO neWarsaw Pact dzisava nepeace, dzichifunga kuti kana one ikangorelaxa chete inogona kuitwa invade the other group. However, Europe's original order was hinged to one question. Pakazoita mubvunzo one wakasara uriwo wakabata the possibility of the reduced suspicion of the outbreak of World War III. Chii chunichi ndechekuti, should Germany join the US and NATO or Russia and the Warsaw Pact? Zvese zvichiitika izvi, Germany yanga ichiri neutral, yanga isati yajoina either NATO or the Warsaw Pact. Saka tikatevera nhoroondo tichaona kuti the US government under George W. Bush made an offer to Russian President wainzi Mikhail Gorbachev mugore ra1990. It was suggested that by George W. Bush, if Germany became a NATO member, NATO would stop expanding eastward, not even an inch. No new members would join NATO. Then the immediate question is, why Ukraine today in 2022? While the agreement was made long before in 1990. Ndiri kuti chiyapa, ndiri kuti pane question 1 yakasara yakabata the decision to stop the further expanding ya NATO ichistopa futi the further expanding ya Warsaw Pact. Yaiva yokuti Germany yojoina which side? Asi mukutraya kusolve this issue, muchinda wainzi George W. Bush waiva president we-USA by that time wakaita meeting nemuchinda wainzi Mikhail Gorbachev mugore ra1990. Ndokubva vawirirana ivo kuti if Germany became a NATO member, kana Germany ikajoina NATO, NATO haizo expanda eastward ichiinda kuside Russia and its allies. Ndokubva vawirirana futi kuti kana Germany ikajoina NATO, hapasisina imwe nyika yaizojoina the NATO organization. Kureva kuti kana Mikhail Gorbachev akabvuma mumaconditions aya, NATO yaimira kuexpanda, hakunazve imwe nyika yaizojoina the NATO. Gorbachev was left with no choice. Wakasara asina choice. Asi ndokubva atenda kujoina kana kupinda muagreement na George W. Bush. Sakureva kuti in 1990 agreement iyi yakasainwa pasi. The immediate question manje, mubvunzo unokurumidza kuuya mupfungwa dzedu ndisati ndandobata zvizhinji zvatichatevera kumberi uku, ndeyekuti why Ukraine yakuda kujoina NATO mugore ra2022. Regarding the Warsaw Pact having given a platform yakaona zvakanaka kuti ipinde muagreement na George W. Bush in the hope that peace will be restored. Later on, the Warsaw Pact was demolished. Yakabva yaurawa the Warsaw Pact in the hope that the West will follow suit, the NATO too will be dissolved. But that never happened. NATO even refused to cease operation. To add salt to a wound, NATO kept the door open to new members, as opposed to what was agreed between Gorbachev and George W. Bush. Therefore, Russia saw it as a step at the back. NATO kept the dagger deeper. One question: will Russia to blame for Ukraine invasion? Will it have a choice? The answer is your fish to fry. The answer on this occasion is based on your judgment, on how you see things. Regarding kubata futi imwe nyaya yakakosha panyaya ndeyekuti matsanangura andaita abudisa kuti USA yakaignore the agreement yakaita in 1990 ichiitwa ushered na Gorbachev na George W. Bush. How USA ignored the agreement? NATO began with 12 founding members. Ndivanani ma-founding members aya? Tinowana Belgium, Denmark, France, Ireland, United States, United Kingdom, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Portugal, Canada, Italy, Norway. That was 1949. In 1952 kusvika mugore 1982 tinoona Greece, Turkey, Germany, Spain dzinojoina the NATO. In 1990 ndo pandoda apa pane yardstick futi yatoda kuti bati pane chitanda chatoda kubayira apa. Mushure mekunge nyika dzatataura dzajoina NATO mugore ra1990 George Bush met Mikhail Gorbachev. An agreement is made on no further allies to join NATO, no expansion of NATO towards Soviet alliance. Gore 1990 paneto agreement yokuti NATO yavhara mutsuwo, no further expansion, no further ally to join NATO. However, toda titarise kuti after 1990 hapana here nyika dzakazojoina NATO. Ngatitange mugore 1999, 9 years later, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic joined NATO as opposed to the agreement ya 1990. Hande futi pamberi 2004 to 2009, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Romania, Lithuania, Croatia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Albania dzakajoina NATO. Nyaya haina kugumira ipapo. 2017 to 2020, Montenegro and Macedonia joined NATO. It didn't end there. In 2021, NATO officially recognized 3 aspiring members: Bosnia, Herzegovina, Georgia, and Ukraine. NATO was also in talks with Finland, Sweden, and Serbia for membership. Almost all countries who were part of Soviet Union joined the NATO, as opposed to the agreement made in 1990. But zvichiitika izvi, Russia yanga yakanyarara here? Russia never kept silent. Warnings were given. A lot of warnings were given. But pane warning one iri yandofunga kuti iri very important kuti titaure nezvayo. Mugore 2007 muna February, pane nonzi Munich conference, Putin wakapa warning achiadresa nyaya the expansion of NATO. Putin questioned the continual expansion of NATO. NATO, obviously, according to Putin, had hidden agendas. Saka, Putin arakuti iye takawirirana mugore ra1990 kuti kana Germany kange yajoina NATO, hakusisina kana even a single country would join NATO. But tarisai nyika dzapresentwa panapa dziri kutaridza kuti dzakaramba dzichijoina NATO irrespective of the agreement. I think another important issue to discuss, imwe issue yatisingafanira kuti tisirire ndeyekuti the main theme with NATO is democracy. NATO is the preacher of democracy. It preaches that democracy is the best as compared to communism, as compared to socialism, as compared to capitalism. Question: is democracy democracy? Handifungi kuti mibvunzo iyi maunzwisisa, but muchaunzwisisa iri pamberi. Democracy may be defined by indirect suppression of the minority. It is a dictatorship in some sense. How can democracy become a dictatorship? It respects votes and ignores idealism. Therefore, the idea that the majority have voted for you doesn't make the majority right. Hazvirevi kuti kana ukavhoterwa saMP ukawina zvinoreva kuti majority iri right. Since democracy ichishanda nevote, on the other hand, we can say vote is not always right. Votes can be affected by manipulation, rigging, nezvimwe zvakadaro. Let us check. Let us visit nyaya ye-vote of resolution yakaitwa pa-Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Pakawiswa a condition inoti choose one between the two. Vote for Russia or vote for Ukraine. Results were as follows. In favor of Ukraine, 141 countries. In favor of Russia, only 5 countries. Absent, 35 countries. Question. Kuvhoterwa kwaitwa Ukraine nenyika zhinji uye kuvhoterwa kwaita Russia nenyika shoma, does it make the majority right? Question. Even though 141 voted against Russia, do they later discuss the cause of the Russian invasion? Question. Will these legs meet of Daniel chapter 2? Question. Will the votes dissolve Russia and its allies? Question. Will NATO overthrow Russia? Question. If not, what will happen then? But according to Daniel chapter 2, the answer is 1. The 2 legs will never meet. So, is this going to be World War III? Let me say, even though the World War may not spark with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a lot of conflicts are taking place at the backyard. World War, therefore, is inevitable in either this invasion or the later invasions. Just check out Mazamasho Madarka in these recent days. India accidentally bombed Pakistan. Is it an accident? Okay, noted. Other conflicts: China versus Taiwan, China versus Vietnam, Iran versus Israel, Iran versus USA, North Korea versus USA, USA versus Cuba, Syria, Yemen, Israel, Pakistan, United Arab Emirates, and other countries. Dziri kuratidza kuti dziri mu state of conflict. Despite the efforts made to reduce the possibility of further outbreaks of world wars, and despite the efforts made to minimize or to put an end to the production of nuclear weapons, guess what? As we speak today, 9 countries are in possession of nuclear weapons. Who are those countries? USA, Russia, France, China, United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, North Korea, most of which are the NATO members. Therefore, we can say NATO has or have the hidden agendas despite the everyday preached democracy. Now, ndoda kuti muone chinhu ichi. Tidzoke patheme yestory yedu, patheme yelesson yedu. Despite the efforts dziri kuitwa, despite the resolutions, USA iriyo leader weNATO haigoni kuzova neresolution inozoita kuti NATO neRussia and its allies zvibatane. This was according to Daniel's prophecy. Hakuna mubatanidzwa uchawanikwa between two legs. Therefore, state yatiri nhasi is a state of conflict. Saka pamberi apa ndoda kuti ndizobata futi Daniel akutaura kuti divided legs of iron, kutsoka dzawo kwakanga kune tsoka dze-iron dzakabatanidzwa nedhaka, asi zvichiramba kucreata bond. Ipapo tichatsanangura futi the hidden agenda of NATO or USA. Hidden agenda yayo iri yekuzama kubatanidza nyika dzose. Saka the European Union or the NATO dzine agenda iri hidden yokufoma a one government inonzi the New World Order. Nyika idzi dzichange dziri ma-ushers oku promota the formation of the New World Order. Nyika yose tenderere, the globe as it is today, inofanwa kuva, or according to EU kana NATO, inofanwa kuva under one government. Kwete izvozvo bedzi, inofanwa kuva under one Christian denomination, which is the Roman Catholic Church. Guess what? Mukatarisa prophecy ya Daniel, muchaona kuti both Russia and Ukraine vanopa simba kuchikara chakataurwa naDaniel, chiri chikara futi chakataurwa naJohn the Revelator. Muchaona kuti world yose ichafola on either the Russian side or the USA side. But dzose idzi nyika idzi kana dzadividwa into two groups, muchaona kuti dzose dzichange dziri under one Christian denomination. Ndichazokuratidzai pamberi apa kuti zvinhu zviri kuitika sei, but in short ndoda kuti munzwisise kuti USA kana vachigadza mapresidents ayo, president wayo mukuru, the hidden president, ndi Pope. Kana mukatarisa Russia, the hidden president ari pamusoro papresident weRussia ndi Pope. Saka muchaona kuti both the two groups vanondoita meet on one Christian denomination inova iyo the Roman Catholic. Ndichazoda kuzvibudisa in the next lesson. Saka vanhu ava kana kuti magroups aya achazama kumanikidza nyika kuti dzive under one world government, vachimanikidza futi kuti nyika kana kuti machurches ave under one Christian denomination, the Roman Catholic. Nhamo ichauya kuneni munozviti makadzidza shoko raKristu. Nhamo ichauya kuneni munozviti muri vaverengi. Munozviti mune chimwe chokwadi chamungabhilivha machiri kana kuti chikakupinzai mushe hwekudenga chisiri the Roman Catholic religion. Kana mukange mune mamwe denominations enyu, be prepared to face persecution. Persecution ichaitika vanhu vaMwari. Matangire epersecution ndiwo andiri kutsanangura aya. Persecution haimbozotangi nokuti Anglican iri kurwa Seventh Day Adventist Church. Haitangi nekuti UFI iri kurwa nePhD Ministries. Haitangi nokuti Church of Christ iri kurwa neAFM. No. But the Christian persecution inotaurwa iya kuti pakupedzisira pachava nepersecution ichabva nekuRoman Catholic. Saka get prepared kuti tidzidze leseni yandiri kuuya nayo pamheri apo. Ndatenda.